We finish Chalukyas. I hope lunch is done for everyone. Okay. So now we have to come towards the last aspect of the ancient Indian art and culture, that is the Pallav kingdom. Okay. And then we are going to start about the medieval India, and that will be Chola period. So both the southern kingdoms, the Pallavas and Cholas, but era differs normally just after the end of Pallava era. Okay. Just like we saw that yesterday, Chalukyas, when they came to an end, Rashtrakuta period will start, and Rashtrakuta is also the medieval India. So one by one we will see that. So as we saw about Chalukyas, that 6th to 8th century AD, Chalukyas were there. In same manner we will see the Pallavas also. They had emerged in deep south during the same time frame. And I hope इतने लोग हैं ना, अभी कोई आने वाला है? Okay. So the point is that in 6th to 8th century AD, same like Chalukyas in deep south, Pallavas we are going to find. And Pallavas basically, just like we saw that Chalukyas, initially it was considered that Chalukyas were like descendants of the Gurjaras or Huns. And that hypothesis was then discarded, correct? And then based on inscriptions we saw that Chalukyas were local people who had initiated the Kannada language. Is everyone paying attention, or just I am speaking? So what I said? क्या बोला मैंने? Chalukyas, कुछ तो बोला. What I just said 2-3 times. Last time I am saying Chalukyas basically, the hypothesis was that they were the descendants of Gurjar tribe, which was a sub-tribe of Huns. But that hypothesis has been discarded. And then based on inscriptions, it was very clear Chalukyas basically, they were the Kannada people who initiated or pioneered the Kannada language. And they made a distinct art and cultural contribution with respect to Deccan. And the era was 6th to 8th century AD, which is known as the late ancient era. Okay? And in that context, we saw the achievements of the rulers also, along with the temple locations or temple sites of the Chalukyas at 3 places. The first capital Ahiol, second capital Badami, and then the Pattadakkal, the temple site. Okay. And then we also saw the paintings also in case of Chalukyas, especially at Badami, and 1 or 2 paintings that we had in case of Ajanta also. So the contemporaries of the Chalukyas in deep south, again we had a map also yesterday, they were Pallavas. And if the Chalukyas were said to have originated from the Huns or Gurjarats, Pallavas basically their origin was traced to the Parthians or Persians. So during this post-modern period, when we had a different invasions, there is Indo-Greeks, Shaks, Parthians and Kushanas. So these Parthians were nothing but the so-called Persians. So Pallava origin was traced to Parthians or Persians. But again, there is no connectivity between the two. Parthians or Persians, they were more or less in Afghanistan side. Pallavas are in deep south, that is in Tamil Nadu. Both were separated by some 7 to 8 centuries. So there was no clear-cut connection. But just like Chalukyas, again based on inscriptions, we were able to trace Pallavas. And Pallavas, we will find that from 6th century AD, just like Chalukyas, they will start their rule. But initial dynasties of the Pallavas, they were found right from the start of 4th century AD. That means when the Satvahans declined. So based on inscription, it is very clear Pallavas were like a feudatories or vassals of Satvahans. And under Satvahans, Prakrit was a language. Okay? The Prakrit of Vardhaman Mahavir or Jainism, that came in Deccan region and it became like a Maharashtri Prakrit as far as the Satvahans were concerned. So Satavahan had a Prakrit or a Maharashtrian Prakrit as a court language. Now, in case of Pallavas also, since they were the vassals and the feudatories of the Satvahans, the earliest inscriptions of the Pallavas you will find in case of Prakrit language. Okay, so the first dynasty of the Pallavas which ruled in a local area, it had the inscriptions in a Prakrit language. Then the second line of the Pallavas which ruled around 5th century AD, they had their inscriptions in a Sanskrit language. Okay. And then finally, now in the middle of the 6th century AD, just like Chalukyas, when the Pallavas were going to start their own rule in deep south from a capital Kanchipuram, this is a third line of the Pallavas, and this is known as a historical line of Pallavas. So this third line of Pallavas that we are going to discuss with respect to the rulers and their achievements, they had issued their inscriptions in Tamil language as well as Sanskrit language. So first dynasty of Pallavas, inscriptions were in Prakrit. Based on this inscription, it is said Pallavas were descendants of Satvahans. Descendants means they were like a feudatories of the Satvahans, and then they got the chance to initiate their own rule. Correct? Then second line of Pallavas, they issued inscriptions in Sanskrit language. And then finally the historical line which emerged in the middle of the 6th century AD, they will have their inscriptions in a Tamil language as well as the Sanskrit language. And even though Tamil is just like Sanskrit, one of the oldest languages of the world. In fact, the two of the oldest surviving language of the world, that is Tamil and Sanskrit, they are from India only. So still you will see in between there was a kind of a time lapse for Tamil. Tamil had to suffer, we can say, to a certain extent for a few centuries before re-emerging again under Pallavas. So from Pallavas basically, and then next to the Cholas, we will find that Tamil language and the Tamil culture, the so-called Dravidian identity as we know, that will now become like a focal point of the whole South India. And that's why we will have the Dravidian style of temples also. It is a distinct temple building style. Just like we saw Vesar style under Chalukyas. Correct? So this is like an overview in case of Pallavas. Then obviously, since this was a third and a historical dynasty, we will find that they had certain rulers like Chalukyas who had their own achievements to their name. Okay? So just first give the heading. We will just have this overview in brief. Then we will discuss rulers one by one. So you can give the heading Pallav Kingdom, 6th century AD to 8th century AD. Sixth century AD to 8th century AD. First subheading would be origin. First subheading would be origin. Okay. First part. Traditionally, like Chalukyas, origin of Pallavas was also traced. Traditionally, like Chalukyas, the origin of Pallavas was also traced. To the foreign dynasties. Like Chalukyas, the origin of Pallavas was also traced to the foreign dynasty or invaders. That is the Parthians or Persians. There is a Parthians or a Persians. Okay. Next. However, like Chalukyas, based on their inscriptions, however, like Chalukyas, based on their inscriptions. It is clear that Pallavas were feudatories of Satvahans. It is clear that Pallavas were feudatories of the Satvahans. Okay. Feudatories means vassals. They were vassals or feudatories of Satvahans. Like Satvahans, next point, like Satvahans, whose court language was Prakrit. Like Satvahans, whose court language was Prakrit, comma, earliest Pallav inscriptions are also found in a Prakrit language. Earliest of the Pallav inscriptions are also found for Prakrit language and have been recovered from the Krishna Godavari Delta. Have been recovered from the Krishna Godavari Delta mentioned as Tondai Mandalam. In Pallav inscriptions. Krishna Godavari Delta mentioned as the Tondai Mandalam in Pallav inscriptions. Okay. Next, second line of Pallavas issued their inscriptions in Sanskrit language. Second line of Pallavas issued their inscriptions in a Sanskrit language. Okay. Second line of Pallavas issued their inscriptions in a Sanskrit language. Whereas the third and historical line of Pallavas issued their inscriptions in a Sanskrit, Tamil and Sanskrit language. Okay. The third and historical line of Pallavas issued their inscriptions in a Tamil and Sanskrit language. Okay. So this is the case. So when we say about this historical lineage or lineage, that is the third one as a dynasty, which issued these inscriptions in a Tamil as well as Sanskrit language. So what we have to keep in mind is that, now first I will tell, then we will write, that just like we saw in case of Chalukya, who was the founder? Jayasingha was the founder as far as Chalukya dynasty. Here in case of Pallavas, we will find in 550 AD, third and the historical line of Pallavas was started by Singha Vishnu. Right? So Singha Vishnu is like a founder as far as the Pallava dynasty is concerned. In case of Chalukyas, we have the founder as well as the real founder. But for Pallavas, there is no real founder as such. The founder himself is like a real founder. So we don't have to go into two different aspects. So Singha Vishnu, he was like a founder as well as real founder of Pallava kingdom. And he had started his rule from this Tondai Mandalam, the so-called Krishna Godavari Delta. But Singha Vishnu basically, he established his capital just on the margins of Tondai Mandalam, just close to today's Chennai, that is Kanchipuram. Okay, so Pallava capital is Kanchipuram. As we saw in case of Chalukyas, they had the first capital Ahiyol, then capital was shifted to Badami. For Pallavas, there are no two capitals, only one capital. So capital is Kanchipuram. It was established by Singha Vishnu, and Singha Vishnu was the founder as well as the real founder with respect to historical lineage or lineage of the Pallavas. Okay? Then Singha Vishnu, as the name suggests, that he was a devotee of Lord Vishnu. Okay? But we have to keep in mind, whole Pallava dynasty is known as Shaivite dynasty. Chalukyas were known as Vaishnavite. Chalukyas were champions of Vaishnavism, but Pallavas are known as the champions of Shaivism. And that's why the Chalukyas had their symbol or insignia in the form of Varaha, that is wild boar incarnation of Lord Vishnu, that we have seen multiple times now. And along with that, eagle or a Garud, that is the vehicle of Lord Vishnu, was also the symbol of Chalukyas. So Chalukya had two Vaishnavite symbol, the eagle and the Varaha. Okay. For Pallava being the Shaivite dynasty, their symbol or insignia was the Nandi, the bull of Lord Shiva, and then the lion. Okay. So Nandi, the bull of Lord Shiva, and the lion, they were like insignia as far as the Pallavas were concerned. Okay. But what we have to keep in mind, despite being a Shaivite dynasty as a whole, some of the rulers were like Vaishnavites. And in that, the very founder is Vaishnavite. Later on, all great rulers will be Shaivite. Again, some rulers later on, they will be like a Vaishnavites, like that. So this is the case. And then we will see that, and that's why just like Chalukyas, Pallavas will also be tolerant towards all religious sects. So even if the Pallavas might be following Shaivism, they will be tolerant towards Vaishnavism, they would be tolerant towards Jainism, they would be tolerant towards Buddhism. Okay? That point we have to focus upon. In case of Pallavas or in Pallava area, Islam had not penetrated. In Chalukya area, Islam penetrated. And Chalukyas who were dependent upon Arab merchants, so as I mentioned, even before Islam came, Arab merchants were there. And even after Islam came, Arab merchants stayed in Chalukya kingdom. So Chalukyas were tolerant towards, they were champions of Vaishnavism, but they were tolerant towards Shaivism also, they were tolerant towards Islam also, they were tolerant towards Jainism also, and they were tolerant towards Buddhism also. For Pallavas, basically Islam had not penetrated in their area, so Pallavas were tolerant towards Vaishnavism, they were tolerant towards Buddhism, they were tolerant towards Jainism. So this is the case. So both the dynasties were religious tolerant. That point we have to keep in mind. So Singha Vishnu was like a Vaishnavite. And then we will see Singha Vishnu wanted Kanchipuram to make cultural center of South India. Kanchipuram was not just political and administrative capital. Singha Vishnu had the ambition to make Kanchipuram as a cultural capital of India, and Singha Vishnu made Kanchipuram as a cultural capital of India. So Singha Vishnu established the famous Kanchipuram University or Kanchi Vidyapit that we have even today. And that is known as Nalanda of Hinduism. The status which Nalanda had as a Buddhist university established by Kumaragupta, the Gupta emperor. Same status was achieved by Kanchi Vidyapit or a Kanchipuram University as a learning, a center of Vedic learning. It was known as a great center of Vedic learning as far as the whole of India was concerned. And just like Nalanda, from all over India, students used to come and basically study the Vedic religion as far as the Kanchipuram was concerned. And then we have to keep in mind that under this Singha Vishnu, who is the founder, yes, please. Okay, under Singha Vishnu, we will find that Bharavi was his famous court poet. Under Singha Vishnu, we will find that Bharavi was his famous court poet. Bharavi was a Sanskrit court poet, because nowadays questions from literature have increased a lot, and more and less questions from Sanskrit literature are emerging. So these are expected questions now that we will get. So Bharavi was basically a Sanskrit court poet of Singha Vishnu, and Bharavi wrote a very famous Sanskrit poetic work, Kirit Arjun, known as Kiritarjun. This is one of the episodes of the Mahabharata, where before Mahabharata war, when Pandavas were in incognito mode, they had completed 12 years of their, we can say, so-called forest dwelling or varmas. But for 1 year again, they were sent to, we can say, incognito mode, Agyatwas, in which if they are recognized by Kauravas, next 12 years again they will have to go for forest dwelling. So in that incognito mode, basically, Arjun, he had become transgender. Kirit means transgender. Why? So that Kauravas should not recognize him. Okay? And then Arjun and the Pandavas, they were staying in Matsya Desh, the so-called Matsya Mahajanpad, as we saw, with the capital Virat, where this Ashoka's stupa, Virat stupa is there. So Pandavas were staying there, and Arjun, he was teaching his to-be daughter-in-law, Uttara, Virat, the daughter of a king Virat, who later married Abhimanyu. So he was teaching Uttara the singing, music and dancing. And in that, we can say, role, he was known as Brahannada. And being a transgender, he was called Kirit. That is the poetic work Kiritarjun, which was written by the so-called Bharavi. Okay? And Bharavi, basically, he was an alumni of Kanchipuram University. He was one of the first alumni and a kind of a famous product, we can say, of a Kanchipuram University. Okay? So this was about the Singha Vishnu, who was like a founder and a real founder with respect to Pallav dynasty. Okay? So just write about the Singha Vishnu. You can give the heading Singha Vishnu. First point, he was a founder as well as a real founder of Pallav kingdom. He was the founder as well as the real founder of the Pallav kingdom. Okay. And he established Pallav capital, Kanchipuram. He established the Pallav capital, Kanchipuram. Okay. Next, he wanted to make Kanchipuram as a cultural center of whole South India. He wanted to make Kanchipuram as a cultural center of the whole of the South India. Okay. Next, it was a Singha Vishnu who established the famous Kanchipuram University. C.M. Vishnu established the famous Kanchipuram University? Known for Vedic learning. Known for Vedic learning. Okay. Next, it was known as a Nalanda of Hinduism. It was known as a Nalanda of Hinduism. And series of colleges and a series of colleges. The series of colleges were attached or affiliated, and a series of colleges were affiliated to the Kanchipuram University. Okay. Next, colleges providing Vedic oblique religious education. Colleges providing Vedic oblique religious education were known as Matha. Colleges providing religious oblique the Vedic education were known as Matha. M-A-T-H-A, Matha. In bracket UPSC 2013. Okay. Next, similarly, colleges providing secular education under Kanchipuram University were known as Ghatikas. Similarly, the colleges providing secular education under Kanchipuram University were known as Ghatikas. G-H-A-T-I-K-A-S, Ghatikas. Okay. Again, to UPSC 2013. So UPSC had to simply ask, what were the Ghatikas and Mathas under Pallavas? Simple question was asked. So Mathas were the colleges providing religious education or Vedic education under Kanchipuram University or affiliated to Kanchipuram University, and the Ghatikas were like institutions and colleges providing secular education. Simple. Okay. Next, Bharavi was a famous court poet. Bharavi was a famous court poet of Singha Vishnu. And was himself an alumni. Of Kanchipuram University. Okay. Next, Bharavi wrote a very famous Sanskrit poetic work, Kiritarjun. Based upon one of the episodes. Based upon one of the episodes or stories of Mahabharata. Bharavi wrote a very famous Sanskrit poetic work, Kiritarjun, based on one of the famous episodes or stories of Mahabharata. Okay. So this is about the Bharavi, who was a court poet. Then after Sinha Vishnu, one or two rulers they succeeded him, but they were not like we can say the great rulers as such. By AD 600, first great Pallava ruler we will get, and his name was Mahendra Varman. Okay, and Mahendra Varman, he was more or less the contemporary of Pulakesin II of Chalukyas. Mahendra Varman, he would be like a more or less the contemporary of Pulakesin II of the Chalukyas. Okay? And we will find that it was under Mahendra Varman, the Pallava and Chalukya conflict, it became, we can say, like a major one. It started picking up under the Mahendra Varman first. And Mahendra Varman first, he is himself an art and culture. Okay? He was a man of a versatile personality. He was a good painter. He was a patron of, we can say, music, singing and dancing. Okay? He was a patron of, we can say, fine arts. And the Pallava temple building activities also started under Mahendra Varman. So being the first great ruler, we will see, it was under Mahendra Varman that a naval expedition was sent to Sri Lanka. But it was not sent for the purpose of conquering Sri Lanka. Rather, in Sri Lanka, the friend of Mahendra Varman was there, and that king, he was known as Manav Varman. And practically the rivals of the Manav Varman, they were trying to, we can say, deny him his own legitimate throne. So Mahendra Varman sent a navy, and then he restored the throne of Sri Lanka to his friend Manav Varman. So it was like a peaceful expedition, not for a conquering purpose or a conquest purpose. But that clearly shows that Pallavas had, we can say, powerful navy. So this is the case. And then Mahendra Varman, in case of Pallav Chalukya conflict also, he would be able to, we can say, resist the Chalukyas as far as their conflict was concerned. So in fact, if you see the era of Mahendra Varman, then he is like a contemporary of this Mangalesh, the uncle of Pulakesin II. And then he will be contemporary of Pulakesin II. Okay? That point we have to keep in mind. So Mahendra Varman, basically, what we will see, initially he was a follower of Shaivism. As I mentioned, that Pallavas are known as Shaiva dynasty. And initially he was a follower of Shaivism. Initially he was a follower of Jainism. And because under Pallavas, basically, Jainism will flourish. Like as we saw yesterday also, that Yuan Sang, the famous Chinese traveler, he had visited the courts of different kings, like Harshavardhan in North India, or Pulakesin II of Chalukyas, okay? Narasimha Varman first of the Pallavas, he will visit, like that. So Yuan Sang, when he had visited the Chalukya kingdom, he has written clearly that in Chalukyan kingdom, Buddhism had declined. Almost it was on the verge of death. But Jainism is rising under Chalukyas. Okay? That was noted by Yuan Sang. Same applies to Pallavas also. So now, in this late ancient period, Jainism had penetrated south of Narmada, and almost all over India, Buddhism was witnessing its own death due to its own reasons, but Jainism was on the rise. Okay? Jainism and Buddhism, they were like, Buddhism was like a hare, Jainism was like a tortoise, and ultimately tortoise was winning the race. Okay? And even today Jainism is alive, Buddhism is gone from the land of its birth. So this is the case. Why? Because as we saw, Deccan dynasties and even the South Indian dynasties, due to the geography and climate, they were dependent upon foreign trade and commerce. And Jains are an excellent foreign trading community. And that's why Jainism was being patronized by Chalukyas also, as well as Pallavas. So the Mahendra Varman first, he was a Jain initially, but he was later converted into Shaivism by a very famous Shaivite saint and that name of that Shaivite saint is Appar. Appar was a very famous Shaivite saint who converted Mahendravarman first from Jainism to Shaivism. This point we have to keep in mind. And then we will see all major rulers will become champions of Shaivism, but they will maintain their tolerance towards Jainism. They will maintain their tolerance towards Jainism. That point we have to keep in mind. Then Mahendravarman first, under the, just like as we saw yesterday, the first ever rock cut cave architecture under Chalukya, that was a Ravan Fadi cave, correct? So similarly under Pallavas, the first ever rock cut architecture will start under Mahendravarman first, and that is known as Mandaga Pattu cave, which we will find in Tamil Nadu. Okay? So just like we can say Chalukyas, the rock cut cave architecture and cave temples, they will also emerge under Pallavas, and obviously they will emerge in a Dravidian style or a South Indian style, and first of them would be witnessed under Mahendravarman first. That point also we have to focus upon. Then Mahendravarman first, since he was a good painter, he was called as Chitrakar Puli. Being a good painter, basically he was known as a Chitrakara Puli. So it was a title of the Mahendravarman first. Then he used to be curious about various things. He was a creative person and he used to take interest in many things, and out of his curiosity he will go for exploring many things, and being curious minded, he was called Vichitra Chitta. So he had three famous titles. First is Chitrakara Puli, because he was a good painter, and when being a curious minded one, the one who was open minded and always exploring something, he was called Vichitra Chitta. And then he was also known as Matta Vilas. He was a great ruler. He was committed to public welfare, but in his personal life he also used to enjoy luxuries and pleasures. Okay? And that's why basically always he would be chill, and so he was called Matta Vilas. Vilas means the one who is enjoying the pleasures. Okay? So Matta Vilas was also, we can say, the title that Mahendravarman first had. And he himself was a very good Sanskrit playwright. He was a very good Sanskrit playwright. Court language of Pallavas would be Tamil. Court language of the Pallavas would be Tamil, but language of literature was Sanskrit. Under Pallavas, we don't have any major Tamil literature, despite the fact Tamil was a court language. Okay? And Mahendravarman first, he himself was a very good playwright, and he wrote a very famous play, Matta Vilas Prahasana. हम बाद में नाम लिखेंगे उसका. Matta Vilas Prahasana was a very Sanskrit play which was written by Mahendravarman first. Okay? Then we will find Mahendravarman first, he established a very famous fine arts gallery of Pallavas. A very famous fine arts gallery of the Pallavas was established by Mahendravarman first at a place called Mahabalipuram, okay? Which is like a cultural capital of Pallavas. So the city of Mahabalipuram, which is located just 64 kilometers north of, we can say, Chennai. Here we find and Mahabalipuram is like a world famous UNESCO World Heritage Site. Mahabalipuram is like a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Okay? And here we will find the fine arts gallery as far as the Pallavas are concerned. Okay? And this is the 2013 PYQ. UPSC had asked this question. This famous rock sculptural panel is known as Descent of Ganga. So the rock which is on the seashore, this is not a rock of a cave. This is not a rock in any hill as such. On a seashore we have many rock boulders. On one of the rock boulders, a beautiful sculpture has been carved out as far as Mahabalipuram is concerned. So here basically we have three sculptural panels. One is Descent of Ganga, second is Arjuna's Penance, and third is ascetic cat. And UPSC had asked this question, that where we find these three sculptures. So this descent of Ganga means what? As per this the Hindu mythology, that the goddess Ganga, the river Ganga, who has been considered as a goddess, she, when descended from Himalayas, she held herself in hair locks of the Lord Shiva. भगवान शिव जी के जटाओं में गंगा नदी बसती है, ऐसा माना जाता है. So that concept basically has been portrayed here. But again, as I mentioned yesterday also we saw this Varaha sculpture of this Chandragupta II. What we saw in Varaha sculpture, that Chandragupta II Varaha sculpture, Lord Vishnu is shown as a Varaha, and he has been shown killing that demon Hiranyaksha, correct? But what was the real meaning of that? The Varaha was Chandragupta II, and the so-called demon Hiranyaksha was Shakas, and then it was a Chandragupta II who has been shown as a slayer of Shakas, correct? Same applies here. Even this is like a mythological story imprinted upon rock, or sculpted upon rock. But actually descent of Ganga doesn't mean Ganga is coming from Himalayas and just placing herself in the hair locks of Lord Shiva. Just underground of this rock there is a great pipeline. It was a irrigation marvel. A great pipeline was basically dug up, and the whole water was channelized to a city of Kanchipuram, the capital, and Mahendravarman also built a new city, Mahendravati. So these two cities, the twin cities of Mahendravati as well as Kanchipuram, the capital, it was like a underground water supply mechanism. So that is the actual meaning of a descent of Ganga. So it was like a public welfare measure portrayed through art and culture. Okay? So this is the case. Second is the penance of Arjuna, whereby again in Mahabharata, just before Mahabharata war, Arjuna wants to have a victory over Karna whenever Mahabharata war will be there. And Karna is a great warrior, so it was not that easy for Arjun to defeat him. So Arjun wanted a Pashupatastra, one of the nuclear weapons, which is held by Lord Shiva, and for that he goes for penance of Lord Shiva. And then in that process of penance, Arjun basically, his rib cage would be visible. Arjun basically पूरे पतले हो जाएंगे, and he is on the verge of, we can say, starvation. That has been shown. That is called penance of Arjuna. And third is a sculpture just as a part of light moment, that a hungry cat is there and she wants to have the mouse or mice at any cost. So she has taken a disguise of a sage, and she is also showing that she is having a, we can say, penance. वो भी तपस्या कर रही है, ऐसे दिखा रही है. So out of curiosity the mice will come, and once the mice comes in her range, she will just take her. That is, we can say, the light moment which has been shown here as a sculpture. So all these three sculptures, they are found in this so-called fine art gallery of the Mahendravarman, and this is called as a fresco in stone, just like we have fresco paintings. So this is called fresco in stone as far as the Mahendravarman is concerned. Okay, and this is found at a place called Mahabalipuram. Okay, even though at the time of Mahendravarman, city of Mahabalipuram was not established. It would be established later by his son at a place where this fine art gallery was established by his father. जहाँ महेंद्रवर्मन ने ये फाइन आर्ट गैलरी बनाई, उसके इर्द गिर्द फिर सिटी बनाई गई थी. So city will come later, gallery has come first. ठीक है, so you should give the heading. So यहाँ पल्लवास का आर्ट एंड कल्चर सेपरेट नहीं है, रूलर्स के साथ साथ ही आर्ट एंड कल्चर है, because each art and cultural, we can say, example is associated with great rulers. Okay? So we don't have to study art and culture separately. So after Singha Vishnu, next what we have, Mahendravarman first, in bracket AD 600 to AD 630. AD 600 to AD 630. Okay. First point, Mahendravarman first was the first great Pallav ruler. Mahendravarman first was the first great Pallav ruler. contemporary of greatest Chalukyan ruler, Pulakesin second. And was a contemporary of a greatest Chalukyan ruler, Pulakesin second. Okay. Was a contemporary of a greatest Chalukyan ruler, Pulakesin second. Next, it was under Mahendravarman the Pallav and Chalukya conflict pick up to a great level. It was under Mahendravarman first that Pallav and Chalukya conflict got pick up at a great level. Okay. Next, it was under Mahendravarman first that the powerful navy of the Pallavas was developed. It was under the Mahendravarman first that the powerful navy of the Pallavas was developed. Okay. And a naval expedition was sent to Sri Lanka. To restore the throne of Sri Lankan prince Manavarman. To restore the throne of Sri Lankan king Manavarman. Okay. Next. Initially, Mahendravarman first was a Jain. Initially, Mahendravarman first was a Jain. Initially, the Mahendravarman first was Jain, and earliest surviving Jain paintings of India. And earliest surviving Jain paintings of India known as Sittan Vasal cave paintings. And this has been asked by UPSC in 2023. Earliest Jain paintings of India known as Sittan Vasal cave paintings. Were developed under Mahendravarman first. Were developed under Mahendravarman first. Okay. Next, Sittanavasal Jain paintings are also called as Ajanta of Jainism. Sittanamasal Jain paintings are also known as, or also called as, Ajanta of Jainism, because even though they are exclusively Jain paintings, even though they are exclusively Jain paintings, in bracket, no Hindu or a Buddhist themes are found. They are exclusively Jain paintings, in bracket, no Hindu or a Buddhist themes are found. Comma, they match Ajanta in their style, technique and use of colors. They match Ajanta in their style, comma, technique and use of colors. Okay? They match the Ajanta in their style, comma, techniques and the use of colors, and that's why they are called as the Ajanta of Jainism. Okay? So they are exclusively Jain paintings. There is no Buddhism, there is no Vedic religion, despite the fact Pallavas are champions of Shaivism. But in these paintings, there is not a single trace of Shaivism or Vaishnavism, or any kind of Hinduism. There is no trace of, we can say, any Buddhist themes. Only and only the Jain themes are there. And they are like the oldest surviving Jain paintings of India, just like Ajanta are oldest surviving Buddhist paintings of India. Badami paintings are oldest surviving Hindu or a Vedic or a Brahmanical paintings of India. Similarly, these are the oldest or earliest surviving Jain paintings. But still, what we will find, that they are called Ajanta of Jainism because they are similar to Ajanta in style, technique as well as the so-called use of colors, but not in themes. Why? Because Ajanta has a Buddhist themes, this has Jain themes. Okay. Next, initially he was Jain लिखा हमने. Okay, next. Later, Mahendra Burman first was converted to Shaivism. By a famous Shaivite Bhakti saint. By a famous Shaivite Bhakti saint. Later he was converted to Shaivism by a famous Shaivite Bhakti saint. Tirukura Arasara. Tirukura Arasara और अपार. ठीक, अपार उतना याद रखा तो भी चलेगा. ओरिजिनल नेम सिर्फ रेफरेंस के लिए दिया है, बाय चांस यूपीएससी ने इस्तेमाल किया तो. बाय फेमस शाइवाइट भक्ति सेंट तिरुक्कुर अरासर known as Appar. More famously he was called Appar. Okay? And these Shaivite saints, they were known as Nainar saint. ये भी क्वेश्चन यूपीएससी पूछ चुकी है. So in 2017 it has been asked, what is Nayanar, what is Alvar? So Nayanars were Shaivite Bhakti saints that we find in South India from 7th century AD. Okay, and Alvars were Vaishnavite Bhakti saints that we find again from South India from 7th century AD. So under Pallavas and especially from the time of Mahendra Varman I, Bhakti movement started from South India. And Bhakti movement had two sects. One is Shaivite sect, that is Shaivism, and the saints who used to follow Shaivism or spread Shaivism, they were called Nayanars. Okay? And the saints who used to spread Vaishnavism, they were called Alvars. Okay? So it was this Nayanar or Shaivite Bhakti saint Tirukura Arasara or Appar. He converted Mahendra Varman I to Shaivism. Okay. This point we have to keep in mind regarding Mahendra Varman first. Clear? Next one. Under Mahendra Varman I, earliest Dravidian style of temples were built. Under Mahendra Varman I, earliest Dravidian style of temples were built. And they were the cave temples, not freestanding temples. Okay, and they were the cave temples, not a freestanding temples. Next, these temples were known as Mandaga Pattu cave temples. These temples were known as Mandaga Pattu cave temples. Okay, where in a rock cut cave, a rectangular pillared hall, where in a rock cut cave, a rectangular pillared hall, known as cave mandapa, was excavated. rectangular pillar hall known as cave mandapa was excavated. At the dead end of which garbhagruha, at the dead end of which the garbhagruha or a devalaya was okay. A rectangular pillared hall will be there. That hall would be called cave mandapa, and at the end of this mandap, garbhagruha or devalaya would be created, okay, where the deity would be placed. Like these caves have the earliest portraits. These caves have the earliest portraits cut out from the rock. Belonging to Pallav kings. Okay, these caves have earliest rock cut portraits, which are like a surviving rock cut portraits to Pallav kings. Okay, in one of the famous rock cut portrait, Pallav king Mahendra Varman I has been shown coming out of a palace. In one of the portraits, the Pallav king Mahendra Varman I has been shown coming out of a palace along with his teenage son, Narasimha Varman I. Okay. So these caves have the so-called rock cut portraits or sculptures of Pallava kings. And one of the famous sculpture is the sculpture of a Mahendra Varman I himself, under whom these caves were made. So he has been shown coming out of a palace along with his son Narasimha Varman I. And at that time Narasimha Varman I has been shown as a teenage boy. So this is a famous sculpture. And why this sculpture is important? Because these sculptures of these Pallavas kings, they are also the first sculptures in India for any king after the sculptures made by Kushan emperors. So tradition of having the sculptures of a kings was introduced in India by Kushan emperors in around 1st century AD. So Kanishka, the famous Kushan emperor, under whom this 4th Buddhist council was held. So we find the sculpture, that is rock cut sculpture of the Kanishka. As far as Mathura is concerned, if there is one rock cut statue of the Kanishka which is 7 feet plus high, tall, and in that statue you can see the statue which belongs to 1st century AD. Kanishka has been shown wearing a knee-length blazer, the today's blazers and coats, which we consider as a modern attire, which has come from US or Europe. That is wrong. 2000 years ago, Kanishka has been shown wearing a knee-length blazer. He has also shown to be wearing the knee length, we can say boots, a kind of a gum boots. Now that statue which is in Mathura Museum, the so-called 7.5 feet statue is there. Unfortunately, due to invasions, the head of the statue or Kanishka's head has been cut, and that is we can find that head separately. So if you just take a look at the head, you will find Kanishka is wearing cowboy hat. So this cowboy hat is also not a new modern attire. It was there 2000 years ago. All these attires, they were introduced by Shaks and Kushans. In fact, the Shaks and Kushans, when they came as the invaders from Central Asia, so already I mentioned they were excellent horse riders. And Guptas, they learned the art of cavalry and horse riding from Kushans only. We also saw that Gupta ladies were also excellent horse riders. Okay? Why? Because the Shak and Kushan ladies, they were also excellent horse riders. So the ladies also, they used to wear jeans in those times. Yes, just for having a comfortable ride. Yes, you have to sit and ride the horse for a long time. दिन में 50-50 किलोमीटर लेडीज को भी हॉर्स को दौड़ाना पड़ता था. तो यहाँ पे पावर लगती है, ठीक है, वरना हॉर्स 2 मिनट में आपको उड़ा के फेंक देगा अगर वो उसने अगर स्पीड पकड़ लिया. If you don't have the strength in your, we can say, the lower, we can say, part of the legs, okay, along with the so-called waistline, then you will be thrown out. So even ladies, they had to cover, we can say, distance of 50 kilometers because there was no modern transport and communication. So they used to wear the jeans. So these attires we find under Shaks and Kushans with respect to their sculptures. तो ये सारे modern attires जो हमें दिखते हैं, they are not brought by Europeans in India. They were already there, which were introduced by Shaks and Kushans at least 2000 years ago. Okay, so these Kushan emperors especially, they had this habit of making their own statues. कुशान एम्परर्स के अंदर गॉड्स के भी स्कल्पचर बनते थे और साथ साथ वो खुद के भी बनवाते थे. और खुद के बनवाने का रीज़न ये था, कुशान्स ऑल्सो यूज्ड टू बिलीव इन अ डिवाइन लाइट थ्योरी. हम ही भगवान के अवतार है. ये जो गुप्तास ने माना था ना, वो कुशान्स की वजह से माना था, क्योंकि गुप्तास किसके बसल थे, कुशान्स के थे ना. तो वही जीन्स गुप्ता ने कैरी किए थे. ठीक, तो उसके बाद यानी 1st सेंचुरी एडी के बाद, बट गुप्ता ने कभी खुद के स्कल्पचर नहीं बनवाए थे. किसी भी गुप्ता एम्पायर का बड़ा स्कल्पचर वगैरह दिखता नहीं आपको. ये ट्रेडिशन गुप्ता ने फॉलो नहीं की थी. तो कुशान्स के बाद अभी ये 7th सेंचुरी एडी है. 700 साल हमारे पास किसी भी इंडियन किंग का स्कल्पचर नहीं है. वी डोंट हैव एनी सिंगल स्कल्पचर विच बिलोंग टू एनी पर्टिकुलर किंग ऑफ इंडिया आफ्टर कुशान्स. So Mahendravarman first and his son Narasimhavarman first, these are like a first sculptures and rock cut portraits of the kings in India after Kushans. That also we have to keep in mind. This will also be asked in the examination. Okay, so have you written that what we have done? Next point, these rock cut portraits of Pallav rulers are also the first ever. These rock cut portraits of the Pallav rulers are also the first ever after portraits of Kushan emperors. After the portraits of Kushan emperors. Okay. Next one. Mahendravarman first had 3 titles. First, Chitrakar Puli. Because he was a good painter. First is Chitrakar Puli because he was a good painter. Second, Vichitra Chitta. Because he was creative. And curious minded. And third is Mattavilas, because he enjoyed the luxuries and pleasures. Third is Mattavilas, because he enjoyed luxuries and pleasures. Okay. Next, he was also a very good Sanskrit playwright. He was also a very good Sanskrit playwright. And wrote a very famous Sanskrit play. And wrote a very famous Sanskrit play, Matta Vilas Prahasana. He wrote a very famous Sanskrit play, Matta Vilas Prahasana. Okay? Okay, so at least 3 years the question has been asked, 2013, 2014, 2016, about Pallava Fine Arts Gallery. Gallery known as Fresco in Stone. Okay. Okay. So this fine art gallery was developed by Mahendra Burman first, and around this fine arts gallery, a new city later got developed known as Mahabalipuram. That has been asked in 2016. And exactly the sculptures which are found, they have been asked in 2013 and 14. It is Descent of Ganga, the Penance of Arjuna, and Ascetic Cat. Okay. पल्लवास का 60% आर्ट एंड कल्चर तो अकेले महेंद्र वर्मन फर्स्ट के अंडर है. ठीक है. नेक्स्ट, महेंद्र वर्मन फर्स्ट was a patron of singing and music. Mahendra Varman first was a pattern of singing and music, singing, music and dancing. Okay. Next point, under him, earliest evidence of South Indian classical music known as Carnatic music. Under him, basically, the earliest evidence of South Indian classical music known as Carnatic music is found in Tamil inscription. Is found in a Tamil inscription known as Kudamena Malai. Known as Kudamena Malai musical inscription. Known as Kudamena Malai musical inscription. ठीक है. Clear? Next point. One more musical inscription. One more musical inscription found under Mahendra Varman first. One more musical inscription found under Mahendra Varman first is known as Ma Mandur inscription or a Ma Mandur musical inscription. Ma Mandur musical inscription. Okay. Next, in this inscription, musical notations of Carnatic music. In this inscription, the musical notations of a Carnatic music, along with musical instruments used in South Indian classical music, are mentioned. Musical notations of the Carnatic music along with the musical instruments used in South Indian classical music. Okay. So two different inscriptions we have. One is Kudamena Malai musical inscription, whereby we will find the earliest inscriptional evidence of a South Indian classical music, which is known as Carnatic music. And one more inscription is there, that is Mamandur musical inscription, where we find the musical notations which are used in a South Indian classical music, and along with that we have the names of musical instruments also. Okay. So one more point that we have to write. 3 musical instruments have been mentioned in Ma Mandur inscription. And are known as Murusu, Murusu, Murusu. ठीक है, कॉमा याजी, YAZI, याजी, and mridangam, ठीक है, Murusu, Yazi and Mridangam. These are the 3 instruments which have been mentioned as far as this Ma Mandur musical inscription of the Mahendra Varman I is concerned. Okay? So these are like a art and cultural achievements that we have in case of a single ruler. So he was like a live or a mobile art and culture of his own types. Okay? In which all types of developments have taken place. The play is there, music is there, then painting is there, okay? Fine arts gallery is there, rock cut temples are there, the Jain paintings are also there, plus his own religious beliefs, which also got changed, that have also been mentioned. Everything is there. Okay? So this was the Mahendra Varman first as far as the Pallav ruler was concerned, and he was the first great Pallav ruler. So he ruled from 680 to 630 AD. Then in 630 AD, for next 40 years, that is up to 670 AD, his son was going to rule, and his son was going to be greatest Pallav ruler, that is Narasimha Varman first. Okay, and obviously we will see he will be the contemporary of Pulakesin II, the greatest Chalukyan ruler. So the Pallav and Chalukya conflict will reach the climax or zenith under Narasimha Varman first and Pulakesin II. So what we yesterday discussed as a part of this Pallav Chalukya conflict, what were the 2 main reasons of this so-called conflict that we have? Pallav versus Chalukyas, both are Hindu dynasties, but एक दूसरे के टेम्पल तोड़ने में मजा आता था, जब अंदर का जानवर जाग जाता था तो. Sorry, first is very good, Krishna Godavari Delta, because that was a resource rich region. And then second, the most primary area for which they will fight, Krishna Godavari Delta is like a second one. The first area, the first region in that semi-arid, resource scarce Deccan region, the land between 2 rivers, Doab. Which Doab? Just like we have Ganga, Yamuna, Doab in North India. किस दोआब के लिए फाइट किया उन्होंने? This is Krishna, this is Tungabhadra Doab or Raichur Doab. Krishna Godavari Delta is there, but they were fighting more. The primary reason was this one. For this Tungabhadra Doab and then the Krishna Godavari Delta, they used to fight the Pallavas and Chalukyas in a violent manner. Because harnessing the waters of the river in that drought-prone semi-arid region, it was just a necessity for them to go for any level of conflict of any intensity. So as we saw that Pulakesin II, who is the greatest ruler or who was the greatest ruler of his own kingdom, that is Chalukya kingdom, he was going to meet the greatest ruler of the Pallav kingdom, not once but twice. So what happened in the first meeting? पहली बार में क्या हुआ? कौन हारा, कौन जीता? भूल गए. Very good. Okay. Yes, Pulakesin II of the Chalukyas. He had just defeated Harshavardhan of North India, and then he was completely full of confidence from that victory. and now he defeated Narasimhavarman first, the greatest Pallava ruler. So what the Narasimhavarman first was going to go? He was going to commit a male sati. Okay? So he was about to commit that Vattakiruthala. That is, you want to go on funeral pyre. Why? Because you are defeated by someone. So you don't want to face your own people. हारा हुआ मुंह लेके अपने लोगों के सामने में कैसे जाऊँ? उससे अच्छा मैं चिता में चढ़ जाता हूँ. That is called male sati, the Vattakirutthal. But he was prevented by his own military general, Parajoti. That he said that हार जीत चलते रहती है. We will make the preparations again. One more IS attempt we will go over. And again, definitely, Narasimhavarman first, he went for next attempt. And in this attempt, he not only defeated Pulakesin second, but he killed Pulakesin second. And then he destroyed the Chalukya capital, Badami, also called as Vatapi. और फिर वो टाइटल कौन सा आता है जो आप याद रख सकते हो साउथ के सुपरस्टार के नाम के हिसाब से? कोंडा. कौन सा कोंडा? सुपरस्टार का ही नाम आएगा फिर. हाँ, Vatapi Konda. The title of Vatapi Konda was taken by Narasimhavarman first. Okay? Once he destroyed the Chalukya capital, Badami or Vatapi. Okay? This was the case. And then we will find that after that, Chalukya power declined for a few decades. But Pallavas, they will continue to rise because Narasimhavarman will rule. After Narasimhavarman first, his own son Narasimhavarman second, he was also going to take the Pallavas to new heights. So this was the case. And just like we saw, the father of Narasimhavarman first, that means Mahendravarman, he had 3 titles. Okay? Narasimhavarman first, he will have 2 titles. Narasimhavarman first, he would be called Kala Samudram. Okay? वो आपका माहिष्मती का नेशनल एंथम है ना, बाहुबली का, उसमें ये वर्ड है ना, काला समुद्रम. तो इस नहीं है तो यूट्यूब पे सुन लीजिए, पता चलेगा. Kala Samudram was a title of Narasimhavarman first, and he was also called Ma Malla because Narasimhavarman first, he was heavily built. He was like a Bhim of Mahabharata. Okay? So in Tamil language, Bhim is called Mahabali, no? So in Tamil, Mahabali is a Sanskrit word. In Tamil language, Mahabali is called Ma Malla, the great wrestler. And that's why Ma Malla is a title of Narasimhavarman first. And as per his title, he built a city, Mahaballapuram or Mahabalipuram. It is a Narasimhavarman first who has built a UNESCO World Heritage Site of India, that is Mahamallapuram or Mahabalipuram. Unfortunately, in 2004 Boxing Day tsunami, 26 December 2004, site is gone completely. जिन्होंने 2004 से पहले देख लिया महाबलीपुरम, उन्होंने जन्नत देख ली. नाउ इट इज बियॉन्ड रिपेयर्स. ऐसा कैन नॉट डू एनीथिंग. या यूनेस्को भी कुछ नहीं कर सकती है, उतनी टेक्नोलॉजी है नहीं जितना सुनामी ने वाट लगाई उस साइट की. 99% साइट इज गॉन. हार्डली हियर एंड देयर समथिंग इज विजिबल नाउ. This is the case. Okay? So this site of Mahabalipuram or Mahamallapuram was basically established by Narasimhavarman first, whereby one of the early temples of Pallavas, which are not rock cut temples but free temples, you will find that. Okay? That point we have to keep in mind. And then it was a Narasimhavarman first under whom, just like we saw this Siha Vishnu, उनके कोर्ट पोएट का नाम क्या है? Bharavi है. Similarly, under Narasimhavarman first, there was one famous Buddhist monk, Buddha Ghosh. Despite the fact Buddhism is declining, yet there was one famous Buddhist monk, Buddha Ghosh. He used to live during the time of Narasimhavarman first. And there was one Sanskrit scholar, just like Bharavi, there was one Sanskrit scholar under Narasimhavarman first, and his name was Vatsyayan. And he wrote a very famous Sanskrit legal work, Nyaya Bhashya. A Sanskrit legal text was written by Vatsyayan known as Nyaya Bhashya. Okay? And under Narasimhavarman first, we will find that rock cut temples of the Pallavas were built. Just we will see that. These are the Ratha temples, the Pancha Pandav Rathas, as they are famous. They were built by Narasimhavarman first. And these are the rocks on a sea coast. Okay? This is not a hill. This is not a cave as such. These are rocks on sea coast. They were converted into temples as far as the so-called Pancha Pandav Ratha is concerned. Okay? So we can give the heading Narasimhavarman first. In bracket AD 630 to AD 670. AD 630 to AD 670. Okay. First, Narasimhavarman first is known as the greatest of the Pallav rulers. And was the son of Mahendravarman first. Okay. Next, he was known as Kala Samudram and Ma Malla. He was known as Kala Samudram and Ma Malla. Okay. Next one. Under him, the Pallav Chalukya conflict reached the climax. Okay. Under him, the Pallav Chalukya conflict was reached to its climax. Next, at first he was defeated by greatest Chalukya ruler Pulakesin second. At first he was defeated by greatest Chalukya ruler Pulakesin second. But later he not only avenged his defeat, but even killed. Later he not only avenged his defeat, but even killed Pulakesin second. Okay. Next, he destroyed the Chalukya capital of Badami or Vatapi. And got a third title, Vatapi Konda. And got a third title, Vatapi Konda. Okay. That is destroyer of Vatapi. So his father also had 3 titles. Now he also got a 3rd title. Already he had 2. आपको तकलीफ हो रही है? बंद करना है? एसी बंद करना है? फैन चालू करना है? If you are facing problems. Okay, so now he also got a 3rd title. Next one. Narasimhavarman first built the cultural capital of Pallavas. That is Mahabalipuram. Narasimhavarman first built the cultural capital of Pallavas, that is Mahabalipuram, also known as Mallapuram. Also known as Mallapuram. In bracket, UNESCO World Heritage Site, 1984. Okay. Next. Under Narasimhavarman first, open rock-cut Dravidian temples of India started to be constructed. Under Narasimhavarman first, open rock-cut Dravidian temples of India started to be constructed. Known as rock-cut structural temples. Known as rock-cut structural temples. Okay. Next. In these temples, big rock boulders on a seashore. In these temples, big rock boulders, Boulders. In these temples, the big rock boulders on a seashore were given the shape of temples. Were given the shape of temples. Okay. Next, most famous temples include Pancha Pandav Ratha, most famous temples include Pancha Pandav Ratha, comma, Draupadi Ratha. Most famous temples include the Pancha Pandava Ratha, comma, Draupadi Ratha, and Ganesh Ratha. Total 7 temples are there. Okay. Next, collectively they are known as 7 pagodas. Collectively they are known as 7 pagodas. PA, Godas, pagoda, and they were based upon the structure of a Buddhist chaitya. They were based upon the structure or a style of a Buddhist chaitya. Okay? They were based upon the structure or a style of a Buddhist chaitya. Next. Despite the fact that they are called Pancha Pandav and named after them, despite the fact that they are called Pancha Pandav and named after them, in reality, they reflect five different styles of temple building. In reality, they reflect five different styles of temple building. Okay. Clear? So they are called Pancha Pandava. As we can see here, name of each Pandava is there. Dharmaraj means Yudhishthir. Nakul, Sahadev, Arjun, Bhim, everyone is there. Then Draupadi is there. Seventh is the Ganesh Ratha, as I mentioned. But practically they are, each temple is a example of a different style of a temple building. That's why they are called Pancha Pandava. So this is the case. Next. Narasimhavarman first continued the tradition of building mandapa or a cave temple initiated by his father. Mahendravarman first continued with the tradition of building the mandapa or a cave temple initiated by his father. Mahendravarman first. Okay. Next, the most famous mandapas. The most famous mandapas. Or cave temples under Narasimhavarman first. Most famous mandapas or cave temples under Narasimhavarman first include Varaha Mandapa, Mahishasura Mandapa, Varaha Mandapa, Mahishasura Mandapa, and Tirumurti Mandapa. Okay, and Tirumurti Mandapa. Okay. Clear? And that means what? Varaha means despite the fact that Pallavas are Shaivites. So Varaha Mandapa shows that Vaishnavism was also shown tolerance. Okay. Tirumurti is one of the forms of Lord Shiva. Just like we have Nataraja Shiva, similarly Tirumurti is also the form of Lord Shiva. And Mahishasur Mardini, that is goddess Durga, she was always going to be there when Shiva is there. So these three are the famous cave temples that we have under Narasimhavarman first. Okay. Second last point under Narasimhavarman first. Buddha Ghosh, an alumni of Kanchipuram University. Buddha Ghosh, an alumni of Kanchipuram University. Was a famous Buddhist monk. Under Narasimhavarman first. Under Narasimhavarman first. Okay. Last point. Vatsyayana, VATSYA, Vatsya, YANA, Vatsyayana, a famous Sanskrit scholar. Vatsyayana, a famous Sanskrit scholar. And again an alumni of Kanchipuram University. Again an alumni of the Kanchipuram University. Was in the court of Narasimhavarman first. Was in the court of Narasimhavarman first. And wrote a very famous Sanskrit legal work. And wrote a very famous Sanskrit legal work known as Nyaya Bhashya. Known as Nyaya Bhashya. Okay. So here the Narasimhavarman first comes to an end. We will also take a break. So obviously I can understand that due to test today the attention span seems to be limited, but things are also factual, so at least twice you will have to revise, because there are so many art and culture aspects that we have covered, and most of them are factual. So I can understand that there is like a bombarding of the facts, but there is no option, and here there is no story which can give any interest to you, but these are the exam oriented points. So as of now we can have a break. After break we will have Narasimhavarman second as a last great ruler, and then a few things of administration which are important for us I will tell. Then we will go to Cholas as far as the next era is concerned. Okay, have a break.